So we'll be arriving at Mont Segur about 9:30, and we thought we'd just do a little review of our Cathar history story. The part of the Cathar story that we've kind of led up to at this point is we recognize that a lot of the magnetic line and feng shui and sacred geometry around the whole Rennes-le-Château Grail complex had to do with how memory is preserved. We want to think about this question in terms of how it was that the Cathars so firmly believed that they knew how to die. Remember, as we discussed what was happening with Saunière at Rennes-le-Château, we realized that the low side of the story there is probably that group was practicing some form of necromancy, that basically the area was famous for knowing how to die. And we looked at how that happened, that the way in which your blood is prepared for a successful death is the place of charge compression, what is a sacred space, which turned out to be related to the five-sided symmetry of that area. So this whole area in South France, from Celtic, Visigoth, and then later Cathar times, was famous for that ability to ignite blood. So what happened to the Cathars? Why was it that they were willing to walk into the flames so happily? I'd like to tell the story in terms of the famous, what's called the Voynich manuscript. When scholars studied the Voynich manuscript, I don't know if you know about it, but it's a famous manuscript that it is said that Bacon sold to the whole alchemy study groups of Europe, and it's one of the most famous esoteric manuscripts of all time. It's called the Voynich manuscript. And in that manuscript, they studied it, and they saw all these herbal preparations, which they assumed was Cathar, and the language they call the green language, which is kind of a universal symbol language, related to the language of the birds possibly, and possibly to Languedoc, where OC, one of the meanings might be bird, as an Occitan. So as they studied this manuscript, they saw all these charts of very esoteric and subtle, but very powerful herbal recipes. And the scholars at that point thought that the Voynich manuscript was essentially a cookbook to take an herbal recipe so that you could die painlessly. And that was actually one of the more famous interpretations of this manuscript that many people would thought was to be Cathar, was it was an herbal preparation for how to die without pain.